So we have a team of plasterers, apprentices, journeymen, coating the walls, coating the ceiling. And coincidentally, we've been upstairs in the attic looking at one of the ceilings here, a vaulted, barrel vaulted, dome ceiling. Really interesting for me as a plasterer, for me as a master plasterer. Part of my job is to reverse engineer what I'm looking at and figure out the whys and the wherefores. Very simply, this plasterer had to understand that how the lath plaster works. But what's critical with the lath plaster ceiling is the way the plaster squeezes between the laths and the ceiling is hung out of the laths. The adhesion isn't really that important. So from down here, everything looks stable, everything looks strong. But at the same time, there's no logical explanation as to why this thing doesn't all fall down on the floor, why it doesn't cave in on top of us. It has to have a structural integrity. And that has to depend on the carcass framework, on the timber framework that's up over us here. So maybe we'll have a look and see how stable that is, how well engineered that is, how much thought and effort went into making sure that 250 years later we'd be standing in the room and it wouldn't fall down on top of us. So now we've come upstairs from that beautiful room and we have very unusually access to the carcass and the structure that whole ceiling is sitting on. Unusual to have access to it, and actually a whole lot to learn from just coming up and looking at it here. One of the little things that we did was pick up a little bit of the key that is lying everywhere on the back of the joist here to discover exactly what we were talking about downstairs, that it's coarse stuff reinforced with hair, and the hair is exactly an eighth of an inch space between the hairs everywhere. Really good plaster, well mixed, well haired, doing everything that it says on the label. One of the unusual things that I spoke about is that business there that looks like pageting. At first look, it looks like something that was put on at a later date. I'm 50 years, I've never seen that before. But again, with that little time to study, time to read accurately what you're looking at, which you can only do with experience. You can't learn that in a book, you can't learn it on YouTube, you have to. And I'm able to reverse engineer that. I look at the spacing in the laths. There's a very wide space, and so my educated guess is that when they squeezed the coarse stuff through the laths to give that hanging effect, because the space was so wide, too much stuff squeezed through, and rather than fiddle with the key, the plasterer just very simply the next morning gave it a wipe of his trowel. He tied it, and that's a superb job now. That, unless that the scissors gets keyed, that key would never be lost. Looking at this structure here, it's very ordered, it's very well thought out. The carcass is built on a press screed forming the exact shape of the carcass, with ribs nailed between those screeds down to the edge of the screed, lathed and plastered, tied into the walls on the four sides, and suspended out of the beams on the corners. The coves are suspended out of the beams. And of course here you can see, first of all, the oak ribbon lath with the plaster, coarse stuff. The laths fixed onto ribs that have been fixed onto the press screed both sides, that carries the structure. That's what gives it its structural integrity. Those battens are only to carry the lats, which in turn are designed to hang the cove, to hang the vaulted ceiling. It all hangs actually out of those little oak riven lats.